Brainiacs. Welcome back to The Broken Brain. It's me, your host, Dwight Hurst, here to share with you a particularly fun episode. It's always fun when Carly and Abby stop by. That's Carly Beaumont from the Temp Arts Podcast Network and Abi Perez of the Friends of Friends podcast. Both joined me to do a little reading and review of some articles from the August issue of Psychology Today. We've done that a little bit before, and that's something that I usually make available on the Patreon for patrons of the show. And so I've just woke up in a good mood and decided to share this one with everyone. If you're interested in participating and supporting the show and getting some of the fun behind-the-scenes bonus materials and other things like that, go to patreon.com/brokenbrain to do it. Welcome, everybody, to the... What do you think of that? I'm workshopping
there you
that.
Go.
What do you think, Carly?
I think that you should keep it. You should keep it, absolutely.
Every episode starts with, how are you doing?
I feel like my eyebrows literally jumped out of my face.
I used to, I don't know if I probably mentioned this on the podcast before, but I used to work in an inpatient psychiatric unit for teens and kids. And on the teens side of the unit, there was a guy that was there every day, and they had a PA system, and you could you could make an announcement through the whole, unit or whatever. And there's this guy, every morning he worked, he'd get on and he'd be like, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, now is the time for the greatest show on earth. Yes, it's goal setting group here. And, he did this big old intro. And it was funny because if you work there, you drag yourself in and you're like, all right, we're getting, okay, he's being funny, haha. And of course, the kids, after being there like 2 days or more, they would come out like, this guy again, this morning,
again.
This guy again, Anyway, so which made it even more fun.
Right.
Because, of course, there's that certain age you cross where joking with kids is more to get the response than it is to actually make them laugh, right? We're all parents, we know.
Yeah, no, I have one that's approaching that age. But she likes to, she likes to just kind of come back and be like, that's not funny. And then walk away. Which is like a little, which is makes me hurts my feelings. And also I'm like, I don't care.
It's crossed to the mean stage.
Right. No, she's getting into that mean girl stage.
Yeah. Well, I'm joined today by Carly and by Abby. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves, and we're going to review which issue is this. I think it's
Secrets.
July. Yes, there you
go.
We're
doing August.
Yeah, the August issue of Psychology Today. And how did you introduce your topic there, Carly? Say that again in that voice.
Secrets.
That's pretty good.
That's how I read the whole article. All articles. Yeah.
In that voice.
And I just whispered it to myself.
Since you're a narrator, I like that.
Right.
That's pretty good. Well, you gotta have that cool narration in your life,
Yeah.
And then every so often, then you stop and say, "Yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got here."
Or is it clear? Yeah. I told a friend, I was like, I have to, prepare. I have to read a bunch of stuff because I'm recording tomorrow. And I told my friend what it was. And she goes, what if this is all like a ploy to get you to spill all your secrets? I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do this.
You're like, I'm a podcaster. I'm not really as intimidated about that as you think I am.
Right. I'm like, I'm ready to spill all my secrets. Blow up my life.
This is a long con that Dwight's been running if this is where
all this time. Yeah.
Still friendship. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see. Carly, you want to tell everybody who you are?
Sure. Well, my name is Carly Beaumont. I run Temp Arts. I have a couple of podcasts. Currently, I am the co-host of Talking Shondaland on Temp Arts, where we talk about Shonda Rhimes' TV shows. And soon I'm bringing back my old pop culture podcast called That Pop This Life, where it's more like pop culture and life and silliness. And we're adding, some talking about some or with really interesting women coming up. So I'm bringing that one back. And I, every once in a while, come on Dwight's show and we laugh about silly things.
I'm really excited about That Pop This Life coming back. I saw that you launched Instagram about the show, right? For the show.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did. Yeah. I'm nervous, but it's going to be fun because that show was a lot of fun to do. And I think we stopped a couple years ago because I just lost all my joy. And now I'm like, maybe I should just bring it back. Maybe it will bring me back some joy. So
there you go. Is Cynthia joining you?
She is, yes.
Yeah.
I can't do it without her.
Wouldn't that be awkward if you
is
said
tough.
no?
Yeah.
I have to cut that out. If it was like, you're like, no, ew. Oh, no, it's been a thing. But thankfully.
We broke up. No, I can't do it without her. That Up This Life is her. I just press buttons and record and edit and stuff. Yeah, it goes.
Well, Abby, tell everybody about who you are. And it's funny because if anyone's listening to the show, they should know who both of you are. You've been on the show several times. But anyways,
absolutely.
Yeah, tell everybody about you.
Yeah, so I'm Abby, as you mentioned. And I have the podcast, Friends of Friends. And that's just around, free resources for combating depression, anxiety, all of these things that my community doesn't even think about. They just want to give you soup and make it go away, or Vicks or something. And sometimes that doesn't work, even though Vicks is almighty and powerful.
Soup and then Vicks. Yes. Otherwise, you ruin the taste, the flavor experience. Right?
Then Vicks, then socks, and then you're healed. But if you're not, that's where my podcast comes in.
Nice.
It's like the chicken is like the caldo de pollo of podcasts, pretty much, right?
I think so. I try. Because, like I said, I just try to put it all out there in perspective and as free as I can be with it, just so that nobody gets intimidated by having to go and make appointments and do all these things. That's annoying. And depression doesn't really give room to do all this research. So hopefully it's little tips and tricks.
It's a great space to inhabit right there where you're just talking about, which is a lot of the things you share are things exactly that are designed that someone when they're in an anxiety or depressive episode can do that. And it's like sometimes we hear resources that are like, oh, do this and run a marathon and, do, all this different things of therapy and stuff. And it's nice to know what can I do on a day when I'm not feeling it or not prepared to do that, or to get myself to a point where I am doing some other kind of like thing, but it's bigger, or just to be able to get by. So very cool. I'm excited to get into this. Now, we started last time with this segment. This is a new segment, the second time we're recording this, the Psychology Today monthly review. And I started last time by reviewing the cover of Psychology Today, the August issue of Psychology Today. I always find their covers to be interesting because I kind of feel like they're going for something here. They're always going for something that's aesthetically pleasing because it's a magazine, but I kind of feel like they are trying to do like a psychological something that feels like a psychologically purposeful image, if that makes sense. And I can only imagine, so the old man Psychology Today out there listening in his ivory tower is like, that's what we're doing. Oh, I don't know. But if they know anyone out there is the photographer expert or whatever it is, I'd be fascinated to know how they go into some of these. But so, yeah, that being said, what are you guys thoughts about the cover of this month's issue? Obviously, it focuses on the big article, which is the one you read, Carly, about secrets. Wait, I can't do it the way you did. Secrets.
The cover actually is very titillating, which I enjoy. And it kind of, that's when you were like, hey, what do you want to talk about? This is, you showed it to me and I was like, that sounds fun. Why not? I thought it was going to be more like salacious. But no, the cover, I thought the cover
is great. So it sold something. It wrote a check it couldn't cash is what you're saying.
It did, but I think if you see it on the newsstand, are there still newsstands around, or am I just super old? But if you would like walk by and you saw that, it would make you kind of stop and want to see what that's about.
There are
sex sells.
I think they're usually staffed by like a really charismatic or abrasive person. It depends on what the plot calls for, but yeah, they're usually staffed by some real character.
Right.
That you have a long, if you're the hero of the story, you have a long-standing relationship with the newsstand owner too, I think is
exactly
the thing that has to exist there.
Yeah, his name is probably Charlie or something.
Yeah. It's probably like, I just added to my tab, Charlie. You never seem to pay for whatever you take from it.
Right.
This is what we've learned from movies.
I'll be back. Thanks, Charlie. Yeah. Well, I'm from New York, so that's how it works. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It is just like that, right?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
It's exactly like that.
I'm
right?
gonna believe that 1,000%.
Right.
I'll never have to pay for a magazine up there. Thank you.
That's so funny. That's so funny. No, I think in all honesty, it's if I'm not mistaken, it's two people, two women maybe, and they look like they're about to kiss. So like I said, I think sex sells and it'll stop a lot of people. Yeah.
It looks like okay. So now, well, all right. I have it looks to me like it's someone shushing.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I think it's just one person
Oh,
doing
it
the
is.
shush, like shush a secret.
Oh, yeah, it is. I thought, you know what? I hadn't seen the cover until you just held it up right now, and it just looked like two people kissing. So I'd take it.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't know if I'm wrong now, but I do like the plot of Secrets in general, just because families all have them. They just never talk about them. So I did what it came to me, and then unfortunately it stigmatized as like a woman thing to do this, but men have them too. So.
In many cases, often some of them more, according to studies, right? So
yes, absolutely. Yeah. But it's funny that you say that, Abby, because the articles, for the exception of one, and I wouldn't necessarily call that one an article. They're all written by what I'm assuming are men. And so I found that really interesting that you say that, because it's like, yeah, it's assuming that most of the secrets that are being kept are women, but then all the articles are like, here's my experience as a man with secrets.
A lot of the articles, you don't mean in this issue necessarily. You just mean
in the issue, the articles. Yeah.
Oh, there are quite a few. Okay.
Yeah.
I know the one I read was written
secrets.
by one, but the one's by secrets. Oh, because it's got all those subsections. Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah. But it's funny because the beginning, the image on the actual article, the secrets article, the big one, I found it to be, it's like is another woman, and then she has a mask and she's doing the shushing thing. And not being funny, I was just kind of like, is this about superheroes? What's going on? And then I remembered that it was like Psychology Today, and I was like, wait, no, it's not.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like right here. And she's got kind of a mask on. Kind of looks like Kamala, a little bit like Kamala Khan.
Kamala Khan, yeah.
From Miss Marvel.
Right.
I'm going to record an episode about that later. But oh, very good. Well, let's dig into the article that you read then. The Secrets We Keep.
Was I the only one that read it?
You read that one. We each read a different one.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Cool. I thought we were all talking about one particular
Yeah. We're all sharing about one particular article. So, yeah, but you're right. This one was written by a bunch of contributors, right?
A bunch of contributors. I believe is 3 men and a woman, if I may assume gender, but yes, 3 men and then a little sidebar by a woman. By what I'm assuming is a woman.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's funny because like the sidebar that was by Jennifer Gutman is just like how to share a secret, and the other ones are like, these are the skeletons in our closets. But I actually quite enjoyed reading about this, specifically the second article, How I Learned to Move Beyond Secrecy and Shame. And that one was more of a personal account. Felt more like a personal essay of the trauma, how he kind of became very full of shame in his childhood with dealing with his father's alcoholism and the shame and secrecy that came around that in his family. And then moving on to his sexuality and being a closeted gay man in a Catholic college that kind of condemned it. And then finding himself and his authenticity. And then and moving on to him writing about HIV and AIDS to kind of counteract some of his, to some of the secrecy and shame around the community and around AIDS and how AIDS was viewed in the 80s, to then him himself being a person with AIDS and HIV, and kind of coming into his own empowerment around that, and not having shame. And that article out of all of them kind of was the one that was the most impactful for me.
Yeah, that's a big relationship, secrecy and shame, embarrassment. Because shame and embarrassment are different, right? I mean, I think embarrassment is just kind of like, oh, I don't want anyone to know, blah, blah, blah. Shame is more like, I don't want this to be, right? I mean, so much, there's a deep, a deep abiding thing, which is a different reason to keep a secret. Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the three main kind of, that the first article was talking about the three main groups that we put a lot of our secrets in. One of them is immorality, where it's about kind of the behaviors around the secret, or why you're keeping a secret being immoral in some way, and connectedness, the intimate relationships that you have with the secrets and why you're keeping it. So his story for me kind of had those two elements, because I read the first article first, that his kind of personal account really cemented it for me in examples and in real life examples. And it felt very clear and less clinical, which I was expecting. I don't usually read psychology today, so I was expecting a more kind of clinical approach to it. So I really enjoyed the personal aspect of it.
I think they go for that. I think they go for accessibility a lot of times for different readers and not necessarily, they'll review clinical studies, but not necessarily reprint them and stuff, which is
right.
Which I think is cool, because otherwise people don't know what I mean, that's a lot of what your show, Abby, is about, is breaking things down for people who aren't going to go out and read the journal or something, right? That maybe you or the research that you might have read.
Yeah, and making it more relatable. Like, for example, Abby, what I really love about your show is that it's relatable. I don't feel like I'm alone in however I'm feeling, especially when it comes to issues of depression and, not wanting to do things sometimes, get out of bed sometimes, and it was very helpful for me to hear, for example, you say, talk about that and your experience around that. It made me feel less alone. So I like that if they usually do that around different topics in this magazine, then I think that it's such a resource to kind of take away a lot of the shame that we have around many issues, including, the secrecy and depression and all that stuff,
Yeah, I mean, even, because I didn't read that article, I read a different one, but just in terms of homosexuality back in the 80s, the fact that it's taken so long for somebody to come out and talk about it and really break down and have the words to say it. Like, it says just in data that it takes people like 10 years as a victim to be able to kind of process their damage. That person, I mean, everybody was kind of shamed and talked down to around that time for just being themselves. And so it not only does a service to anybody right now to say, hey, look at all we've come to be able to have, all our freedoms, all of our things, but we still have to be really stern about, how we are very open and vulnerable and transparent and ourselves. It's so important to be ourselves. So I would want to read that article just because of that. Like, I even teach my kids about how limiting it was and how people couldn't get married. Like, it seems so foreign to them and they still don't really teach it at school yet. It's so weird to me. And I'm like, that to me is like aligned with, the Holocaust, like all of these things, like we were pursued as a people. So it's like to be able to put it together in such nice, simple words, though it's necessary, it deserves a lot more press, I think, than just being in a psychology magazine, because we're just like, now all of a sudden we have rainbows everywhere, which is beautiful, but it's like, come on, this came from this horrible thing and we need to love them and we need to be so appreciative. Like, I don't know. It's just, like I said, kids don't even think about it. It's unfortunate that they think about, they hardly think about it like a rotary phone or whatever. They're like, what is that? What do you mean? I'm like,
yeah, it's interesting when you say when secrecy attaches to who you are. And I work with a lot of people who've gone through that, and I work now with a lot of people who are trans and are going through that process, and to be pushed into a position. And oftentimes it's at odds with like a family faith community or something that's important to somebody, maybe, that they're like, well, I identify, with this group, and how do I come out when coming out is going to mean so much. And when, you get that there. And then it's interesting, Abby, as you're saying that too, you're kind of touching on, there's that connectedness reason you mentioned, Carla, like, which could even be about, I'll say in air quotes, protecting someone. Right. And I think, institutionally and societally, you're talking about how we leave out stories, right? It's like, oh, hey, even in areas where maybe a school will, and unfortunately there are areas that fight against it, but even when they have like pride flags up, or they have the GLAAD clubs and things like that for students, and they're very affirming, they still don't want to talk about the abuse and discrimination of the past either, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a whole thing about, not to launch into like critical race theory stuff, but to me, it's essentially that comes down to secrecy, is being like, well, we don't want to talk about things that don't look very nice. Right. And that's a form of secrecy too, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think our culture, in this country at least, our culture is to just kind of like, let's not talk about anything that was ugly that we did that was ugly, Yeah. And we need to in order to learn from men, in order to know where we came from, when it comes to let's say pride. Like now you do see pride flags everywhere, and all the corporate stuff, but I think sometimes it's good that now we're, that people are being more accepting of the LGBT community, but at the same time, it's like we do need to know where that come from. We do need to know that it's not just rainbows, that it, what is this? Stonewall started as a riot, and it wasn't just like a rah-rah sis boom ba type of celebration. Mm-hmm. It's great that it's a celebration now, but we also have to kind of come with that knowledge and information. And I don't know, it's up to, I guess, parents and all of us to kind of just try our best to do that. But that goes across many issues. Yeah. Many issues like slavery, and how we treated the Japanese, or how we treated the Native American, all that stuff. So like, it's more than, it's this kind of like culture of just like maybe forget.
We're selective.
Yeah.
Right.
Selective,
right. Yeah. There's a certain group that wants to forget a lot more than others. That I happen to
erase.
belong to.
Erase.
As it turns out, it reminded me, as you're saying, like, speaking of white people, Michael Harriot's a writer who writes about race and things, and he does a podcast also. And he was saying, he did a recent one about uncomfortable white children, is what he called it. And he talked about how they don't want to teach certain things in school, and mostly it's to protect how the kids feel. And he's like, but actually, when you're if you're a white person in America, if you don't ever feel uncomfortable, it means you don't understand your own history. Right. And if we don't have uncomfortable white children and uncomfortable white people, it doesn't lead to any advocacy that means anything. Right. And it was a whole episode that he did, and he wrote about it. He's a good follow on Twitter too. He does a lot of historical stuff as well. But
what's his name?
Michael Harriot. Yeah, not James Harriot, not the veterinarian from All Creatures Great and Small, although he's also great.
Right. In a different way. Right.
More fictional way. But he was a real guy. Anyway, whatever. You guys wanted to talk about the semi-memoir books, All Creatures Great and Small, of the British veterinarian James Harriot, right?
I'll read it to my dog. Thank you.
Season 3 coming out on PBS soon. Speaking of white people. Anyway.
The Broken Brain. And now, a message from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Viviana Triana, one of the EMDR trainers for Three Rivers, and I am super excited about being able to support our fellow clinicians in working with these complex cases, clients who have a life experience of trauma. It's not about what has happened only, but it's about what is happening and what could happen for them. So EMDR therapy has been proven to be efficient and effective in treating those cases. So I look forward to supporting you and providing information and the tools for you guys to know what to do with those cases, not only applying it with the adult population, but also with children, adolescents, and their families. Hope to see you there.
Stay up to date with Three Rivers' latest EMDR trainings by checking out carolmiles.com. That's www.carolmiles.com. I'm going to tie that in, just even on a personal level. One of the reasons I know that secrecy exists a lot of times for someone like me, speaking of a particular flavor of shame, is those of us that are people pleasers or in my life, I've had a even pathological fear of disappointment or letting people down, right? And that often leads to secret keeping or even deception at times where we don't want to tell someone something if it's going to let them down. And then, but in the long run, that's usually great. No, it's usually bad. It's usually not effective and usually more hurtful to be not silly about it, right? And more hurtful in the long run.
People get sick from all these things. Like there's a lot more research now on how not just anxiety, but like the root of where it comes from makes you have aches. Like the popular backache could be from stress. Like it's from anxiety. It's from all of these things. And so it's just a really crappy, there's no actual science to this, but in a weird alignment to this, in my family, there was always a lot of secrecy. My biological dad was told to me that he was my oldest brother. So they never told me. That all happened because he had me when he was like 18. And so I called him my brother my whole life. And right at the end when he was dying from prostate cancer, because ironically, the men in my family just die from that. And I have no idea if it's a stress or whatever, because there was no rooted thing. But yeah, right when he was, doing final medicine and chemo and things like that, he kind of said, "Oh, well, I'm just glad I saw my grandkids." His kids didn't even have kids or anything, but I did. And so it came up, all these little things, they just couldn't hold it anymore. But that was the only thing. And then like his own dad, which was my grandpa and called my dad, he always had that whole secret too. And at the end, both of them were always like, "Where's Abby? I need to talk to her." And it was like, bro, you guys are like sitting on this topic your whole life where you could have told me and I'd have been like, okay, like, oh, cool. I have siblings. Like,
right. And it's interesting.
But
yeah. How sometimes the way that something's revealed in the timing is something that can be greatly healing, but that's not often how we do it, especially those of us. And I'll throw myself in this camp of like, when there's fear associated with it or shame in that way, it's like, oh, I got to guard against this, or I got to, and make sure everyone feels okay and all this, and just everything runs smoothly day to day. And it's like, actually, having a big, tough conversation earlier, you would have preferred that. You'd have been like, wait, let's get to terms with it. And maybe we can actually use this as something to, instead of just kind of, drop it on me now, I mean, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm just saying.
But that's what it felt like. It was almost like, you guys, we obviously we all grew up together, but it was just a shame because he wasn't married, literally just because he wasn't married. And we were of a Christian household that there was that whole stigma of, they had sex before marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
But back then in 89, it was this whole horrible thing to have in your family.
Yeah.
Because I had my kids when I was 18 and 19 just because nobody dared have the conversation about sex. Sex was not on the table. So,
oh my gosh. Gosh.
Yeah,
that's very real.
Yeah.
That's very real, especially in Latin. I also grew up in a Latin household, and it was just kind of like pat on the head, or you would hear it through osmosis, as I like to say. Like you would hear like your parents talk about it, but they never really like directly sat down and was like, "Hey, this is."
They would just like randomly yell out, "Don't end up pregnant."
Right.
Like, I don't know what that means.
right. It's funny. Before I read this article, I would have thought that what makes you sick, they say that you're only as sick as your secrets, or the secrets are what make you sick. But I thought that it's the withholding it, the not saying anything, the keeping everything to yourself and inside, that is what kind of messes you up. But in the article, I realized that there's actual like proof or evidence that it's not the withholding that hurts, is the ruminating that harms you.
Okay.
The constant like thinking about it and like, beating yourself up, or like that is what really harms your psyche. And that was, I think, my biggest takeaway from reading these articles.
You're right. Yeah, that's something that I can align to that, because we've been just here. Me and my partner have been just kind of studying Buddhism and just kind of going back and forth. We joined a temple close by, and we just hear from even the teachers that are there. They're like, Buddhism and meditation isn't in competition with anything. It's just there to help you manage your thoughts, because you're right. And they go always to say your thoughts, just getting caught up on your thoughts, not only distracts you from being who you really should be, but also it's causing you pain if you're ruminating on the same exact negative thought of shame or whatever. And so understanding that first of all, it's not a religion to be in competition to anything. They're like, you could be Christian, Catholic, whatever, and still do Buddhism and meditate and help yourself manage your thoughts a little bit better. It reminds me of how we are not taught to like slow down our thoughts and check, oh, is that good for me to sit on? Is that healthy for me to continue thinking about? Should I talk to somebody? No, it's too terrible. And we just continue judging ourselves. So yeah, I think it is that combination of just not being able to move past some shortcoming that you sort of deem it a shortcoming, and just forgiving yourself, I think, does a lot for our health.
Of course. Just talking about it to anyone, you know, and especially there's so many different communities where seeking help to just speak to someone is like demonized almost, you know. It's you know, I know I came from a community where it's more just kind of like, oh, whatever, she's crazy, or she can't deal with it, or he can't deal with it, instead of being like,
or you're so
right, or instead of just being like, you know, maybe you should talk to someone. I'm always constantly saying that now. I find myself saying that a lot with my peers, my friends, where I'm just kind of like, hey, if you do have a problem, just have someone, you know, go talk to a professional, or have someone that you can talk to, because it'll help. And I am still surprised. Actually, no, I'm not surprised with my age group that everyone's just kind of like, no, I don't know. I don't think that works. It's crazy to me. It's baffling to not use the word crazy. Like, it's baffling to me how many people are still, you know, in this day and age where, you know, like, just, I don't know if that'll work. I don't know if speaking to someone about what's going on inside of me would work. You know, and I think we just need to do a better. No, I'm sorry. I just think that we need to do a better job at normalizing it and making it okay, just like societal wise. I know I'm not saying anything like
no, but
it's true.
Yeah, like, I don't know if you've ever noticed, like, at a party, if somebody says, oh, I don't drink, they're like, well, why? Like, it's a whole big deal. So I do a very similar thing when people tell me, no, I don't want to go to therapy, because somebody in my family right now is considering divorce and things like that. And it came up very recently where I was like, well, have you guys done counseling? Like, it would be super important to just go and vulnerably share, because, oh, but, you know, it just doesn't work. Like, you know, we did this. And I'm like, oh, so my answer to that is always like, so you think that you have all the answers? Like, that's what you're saying, that you don't need anybody else's opinion, not even a third party. So then why are you telling me?
Right.
Why are you giving me this thing? Because, you know, what I wish for you is that you would get help. It's helped me tremendously. And, you know, we don't always have the answers. That's how I assess my kids too. Because I'm like, hey, if you're struggling with this, why not talk to somebody? Oh, well, I'd rather talk to you. Well, I do talk to you, and you, rolling your eyes. And I'm like, we don't always have the answers. We need to be humble about how, like, somebody could help us, even if it sounds so ridiculous. They could have read a book that you don't know and give you advice from this source that we wouldn't have looked for or had the mind to look for, because just we're not in a calm state right now.
Right.
And it's
we
interesting
need to be humble.
Yeah, the externalization of that too. I've had that experience of saying something in a therapy session. It's interesting. You'll find yourself saying something that it's like, oh, holy cow, have I ever said that out loud before? Or have I ever said that out loud in front of anyone other than maybe one other person or two, you know, once or twice in my life? Have I ever said that out loud or ever put it into words? And it's like, that's such an interesting feeling to hear yourself say something and to get that information out there. So in whatever form and whatever place.
Oh, absolutely. Or even just talking to someone. I find myself in therapy when just speaking whatever is on my mind, I come to a conclusion. And then, you know, my doctor's like, yeah, you see, You see, you just have to pretty much just work it through. And I'm like, if I would have just said it, if I would have just spoke to someone, if I would have just, X, Y, and Z, I would have, it wouldn't have weighed on me so heavily. So it's important.
Well, let's see, Abby, which article did you read?
So I read the one about fertility and how the sisters were, I don't remember the name of it. I had the screenshot on my phone, but if I get out of here, my camera will go away. But it was really envy between, it was envy between two sisters. One was able to have children and the other one was not. And the mother was kind of very torn in between because she just kind of wanted to be there for both, really enjoy her grandchild, but also they felt this weight of making the daughter that couldn't have children, feel this sort of less than emotion because she couldn't have kids. And just in that scenario, it was more to me the fact that people aren't comfortable having the conversation of her life is separate from yours. Your health and your anything doesn't have anything to do, because not just your sisters having kids, but like the whole planet may or may not have kids, and maybe they don't even want to, and they can. So it shouldn't make you like that's, and it's crappy to say, but it is a you problem, and we can talk about it, but we need to really feel stronger, especially like for me as a parent. My kids will fight about endless things, whether it's sometimes they have body dysmorphia, sometimes they experience complete depression, sometimes, there's all these different things, and they look at the other sibling and they're like, well, why are they in such a good mood? Because they are. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to not be in the same mood as everybody else. And I don't know, the article itself had a description where they encouraged the mom to say, hey, you need to go and seek out help. You need to go and talk to somebody. It's still kind of like we were talking about this whole time. It's still surprising to me that we don't know to do that yet. That we don't know to say, hey, like, maybe you're just stressing yourself out because you want this so bad. Like, also, have you considered, and like I said, me as also kind of adopted child, have you considered adopting kids? Have you considered maybe, it's okay that your body doesn't act a certain way. It's okay. Like, please still work on loving yourself because you matter, you're important, and we don't all have to have the same life experience. And that's one crappy thing that we've been conditioned to expect. Yeah. We're all from A to Z. There shouldn't be any hiccups because we should have a job. We should have some sort of marriage. We should have a dog. And, it's this idea, but there's, that idea can go however for so many different people. And that's when we become upset when we don't get what we think we deserve. And
that's a big thing I've heard you talk about a lot, is about individualization of a life plan or of acceptance of where is my life taking me? Am I making decisions based off of what I want and what works for me and for my family and people around me? You're very into that individualization and not just accepting the prescribed whatever somebody else says you should do or something, right?
Yeah, because all my friends didn't have kids when I was 18. And so for me, it was like, I'm missing out on all these trips, or I never had roommates. I couldn't have an apartment with roommates or whatever. But it's like, well, now I have this experience because my kids take all my clothes. So I'm like, I kind of my roommates. I miss all my stuff. So I'm like, I didn't miss out on anything really.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just a different, you just experienced it at a different time. Yeah.
Exactly. And so just in my mind, like, it's just being patient with ourselves and having somebody that loves us kind of call us out in a nice way, because, intention really matters. And I don't think people go off of intentions a lot. We take offense to a lot of different things, especially just in the notion of how our culture is going. That's why it's hard to talk to a friend. As you were saying, like, it's a great recommendation to say, go talk to a therapist, because even just on Facebook, there's like just these polarizing opinions where it's like, my boyfriend doesn't text me back in an hour. Dump his ass.
Right. He's cheating on you, girl. Yeah.
He's a cheater.
Right. And it's not like social media is the best place for nuanced conversations, but yeah.
And you know what? I do my due diligence of trying to find those spaces, even on social media. They're on Facebook. I'm ashamed to say because it's just a hilarious number, but I'm in like 900 groups. Okay.
Wow. Wait, are you exaggerating?
No,
Oh,
nothing.
no.
Wow.
I wish I was. But yeah, it's something that is hilarious and embarrassing, but it's
That's
more hilarious
funny.
than embarrassing, so I'm sharing it.
But now the
But,
question is, how many of them let you update your episode links? Drop your episode links every week.
Oh yeah, probably like one.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
one is
Like,
because everybody's sharing their links.
right, exactly. Yeah.
It's funny.
But yeah, so like there are a bunch of different groups, and like relationship groups are always like very polarizing. But there are all a lot of other spaces where it's like, whether it's people learning to do a new skill, people are more with empathy and they're more cautious. Like I'm in a bunch of like drawing groups and people learn how to draw and they're like, well, look at this book. You need this learning and you're doing great. And I've always heard that feedback, and I'm like, why doesn't this happen in the groups where we need emotional support?
Right.
And there's a couple groups that I found recently for BPD and borderline personality disorder. And those groups seem to be more of a safe space for a lot of folks where they're like, I am going through an episode right now, just, kind of posting my thoughts here. Anybody have suggestions? And a lot of people will say, hey, self-care, take a long walk, whatever. So it's different spaces where we're selective about it, but it's like, I don't know what causes that impact in people. Maybe because they feel like I'm going through this too, but like I said, even in relationships right away make people trigger and say the worst about the other person when they haven't even heard the two sides of the story. So it's just like in the article itself, like that's why I thought it was so interesting that they pointed out this story of a mother and two daughters. And it took the mother quite a while to really say, hey, like you need to talk to somebody because, this is something that is good for you to work on. And there's no shame in it. It's okay. And
it's
an
interesting activating topic too, right? Because when you look at that with like family members and especially with mothers and daughters, and the issue we said like was fertility, it's funny because that to me is one of those examples of a topic that is so core. Like it's tied deep into a lot of our life beliefs and I think especially for a woman, like the socialized way that you're supposed to look at yourself and all that. And at the same time, it's also something that we just assume everybody feels the same way we do about or something, or it's like, oh, this is how you solve that, or this is what you're supposed to do or whatever. And so it's something that is so meaningful and deep and personal and individual. And at the same time, we treat it as if it's just, everybody got that, right? You just go have a kid, whatever. Every supposed to, yeah.
If nobody had a blink of an eye, they're just there. They have their kids. I mean, I blinked and I had kids. I was like, oh, okay. But it's a huge deal. Like even there, a person that already has these very high expectations about what their life is supposed to look like. I think that's the person that really should take their time also to have kids, because I was raised in a family like that where they were like, well, your cousin's going to school to be an astronaut, and why aren't you paying attention in school? What is this, a B? What are you, stupid? I'm like,
Right.
no, what are you talking about? I can't even read English right now. What are you saying?
I'm working on something else. I can't even think about space. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't even know the name for cloud.
And it really has to do with like, it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is what we project into a situation too, right? And I think also, once again, it's some of those really, really deep things that tie in with our own sense of self-esteem, all that kind of stuff that we just kind of make a lot of assumptions about, and we don't actually talk about or sort out. What am I projecting into this, or what am I triggering? And like you said, if someone's like, oh, you haven't gotten a text back, huh? Dump him. And it's like, well, there's a projection probably going on there of someone else's experience or feelings or whatever. And it says a lot about what's that person's assumptions about what's expected. And it is interesting when in social media, you bring that up, we bump into those things without ever actually, we don't even know the other person sometimes. I mean, some groups, it's like, oh, someone's like, oh, let me live my life out loud here on Facebook, and all the feedback you're getting, you don't know who that's from or what their beef is, or if they even care. If they're, you don't know if they tweeted that or Facebooked it or whatever, and then turned to whoever's sitting next to them in real life and said, "I said to dump him," or if they're like, "No, you should dump him." You don't really know even where that's coming from. Yeah,
Right.
You don't know the tone, the intention. So I just think that we don't hit a lot of these topics with empathy. Like, at least me as a parent now, I would have talked to that child or that daughter and had been like, why couldn't you continue working on yourself while you still work on being an aunt? That's still an experience of being with the child and then seeing how you feel about it. Go and help her and go and see. And it's not a resentment thing. You're not even going to have time to think when you're around a baby because you're just like, these delicate things. And so it's just, there's so many different creative ways of like getting out of it and not also putting the limelight only on the anxiety or that negative feeling. Because I think we also tend to dive right in and focus on the negative feeling that person is having, where I've noticed that therapists don't really do that. They step back and they let you say all these things. And it's very seldom when they go, "Oh yeah, tell me more about that crappy thing." They don't do that. They kind of let you say it as a normal statement. And then they're like pointing out what's great that you did at that time. That's what I've had in my experience for a couple of my therapists that I've really enjoyed. They go, "Look, you did great here. You did great there." That's a healthy behavior. They want to focus on the positive. And so that's a lot of what I try to do just even as a person, because my half brother, anybody, like they'll just share some stuff about their life and they're very in the weeds about the problem. And I'm just like, well, outside of the problem, look at what you're doing right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you find sometimes that like the way that many of us relate to one another is through negativity in general?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so easy to do that. And there's data also pointing that we are all very driven to bond over some sort of negativity. So, I mean, obviously that's why all of these different groups of hate thrive and they have all these people because they're like, yeah, me too. But then, that same kind of hate can go back on you because that's all you're focusing on. Why wouldn't they treat you like that? Why wouldn't they flip it on you? So that's why a lot of the relationships that I go off of now, it's more like, that's really cool that you're doing that with your life. I really, I admire you for this. I admire you for that. And I don't focus on how maybe some things in someone's life are not going great. And they can tell me, "Oh, I'm struggling with this." Well, that's really, that's really hard. There's therapists for that. There's lawyers for that. There's all these things. I had to figure it out myself, but it's more like, you still have a house, you haven't been evicted, you haven't been, all these things. Like, it's not necessarily toxic positivity, but it's more like we're not taking advantage of how grateful we could be for some of the basics. I went downtown just a little bit ago, and it's like college town. ASU is out there in Tempe here in Arizona, and there's a lot more like 20-year-olds sleeping on the street than I've ever seen before.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if there's, just because the economy, just because jobs don't pay high enough, just because people don't really have the opportunity to get along, to be roommates. I don't know. And I couldn't, there's so many reasons, but mental health is one of the biggest things of why somebody might end up homeless. And, just kind of even thinking about it and realizing like they're seemingly look young and healthy, but I don't dismiss the fact that jobs are hard to get. Jobs don't pay very well, all of these different things. And it's like, dang, like there's a whole different level of empathy that we should be having for other people. And that's not talked about. We don't allow, there was a story where I also heard like this person wanted to let a homeless person sleep in the front yard of her house, and she was more than welcome. And she was like, "Yeah, they could sleep in my front yard. It's my front yard." The neighbors all complained to the HOA. The neighbors all complained, and she was like, "What are you talking about? I'm helping somebody." Right. And it was like, just because you guys don't want to look at it, do you guys realize what you're doing? Like, she's helping a person out. Like, this may happen more and more with the way that the economy is going. And, we just need to, I always just try. And that's also something that I meditate on while I do my like practice is just like, okay, I have all these thoughts. How can I focus on like the nice thing or the empathetic thing or even the curious thing? Like, are you okay? Is this okay? Like, just being more connected into how somebody would feel if it was happening to me. And I just don't think we put each other in those shoes anymore. It's said in different ways. It's said in the Bible. It's said in so many situations, but it's not really practiced.
No, I think we have an epidemic of, there's a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In general, across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in that article, that's kind of what it reminded me. Like the sister didn't really have empathy for, even if you are a parent, that's still super hard. And, her feelings and her biology may not change by just being resentful. In fact, she's just maybe going to stress her body out more and still be very resistant to fertility or whatnot. And so just how do we bring it up? And we have to have some of those hard conversations to be able to get to a more comfortable place. But you're right. We don't make people uncomfortable as much anymore. We don't want to press those buttons. And everybody can press buttons. You just don't have to be rude about it. It's just being very polite and saying, hey, have you thought about this? Yeah.
Right. Have the conversation. Yeah.
It's amazing the things you can communicate if there's a feeling of mutual respect or especially having each other's back or being on the same team, almost anything. You can get through a lot. And people don't realize that if they only dip their toe into a conflict on Facebook or whatever, that, in interpersonal, like if you're really intimately connected to someone, that they love you and whatever, you can actually say quite a bit to each other that's actually may not be in agreement, and people can find a place to be. I'm going to hit my article. Actually, empathy plays a big role here too, which I think is really interesting with what you guys are saying. Mine's about, I picked one about misophonia because I didn't know much about it. And I kind of like the little, I'll hold the picture up to the little camera here if anyone's seen it, little angry guy with fingers in his ears. Basically, and the interesting thing is this is something you would think of as and I'll use the air quotes that I always do, like physical malady. And a lot of people distinguish between physical and psychological maladies. And the interesting thing is that they aren't actually that different. Because the psychological parts of us are contained in the body. So really all medical problems are physical problems, right?
Right, absolutely. So, do you want to define misophonia?
Yeah, misophonia is, even here in the article, it's by Jennifer Brout. She's a psychologist. And she said, misophonia is characterized by an intolerance for certain sounds, regardless of how loud they are. So somebody might be triggered by like gum chewing, or chewing at all, basically, or pen clicking or something like that, I don't know if you guys can pick up on that one. Anyway, anyone out there, sorry for any listeners with misophonia triggered by pen clicking. Especially if they're right now canceling their Patreon subscription to this episode. They're like, oh, no, he did it. But, the interesting thing is that they often have accompanying visual triggers, and they are usually repetitive or sounds that have a pattern. Some examples in the article are chewing, sniffing, sniffling, typing. Another person's breathing even can be a trigger, not as much of a common one. So some people believe that it comes from an aversion to pattern-based sounds, and they become paired in memory to certain people. And that's actually a really interesting part of it, is that you might say, is that just because there's certain people just hearing sensitivity, and that's common with people on the autism spectrum and people with ADHD and high distractibility. But one of the really fascinating things about misophonia is it seems that when you are on the receiving level, if you have misophonia, you can feel really attacked by sound. And the studies also show that it tends to associate with certain people. So they say people will say things like, oh, my sister is my worst trigger. My husband's my worst trigger, things like that. And there's a danger there is that when we psychologically attach and interpret that as the other person is the trigger rather than, sometimes at breakfast time, I'm there and my sister's there, of course, and she's eating cereal and crunching cereal is a huge trigger for me. And so if I look at that, that's different than saying my sister is my trigger, right?
Right.
And
yeah.
So it talks about that avoiding. It's kind of funny because it says to avoid language that solidifies a link like that or labels people as a trigger. And I made a note on the side of the page where I noticed that I this morning that I only put the words avoid people, which was not what they were that's not what they were recommending, but apparently that's what I took out of it. Avoid people.
Right.
So that could be a solution for lots of life's problems.
For almost all of them.
Yeah.
But one of the most interesting things, and they have some tips here for coping with it, but the biggest that I can talk about, but the reason why empathy made me think about this is that is the main thing. That basically you've got two different experiences, and this is where it really reminded me of some of the stuff Abby was saying, is that you have a person who is the one suffering, is what we would usually say, the one with misophonia, they're struggling with, they're suffering from, whatever, misophonia. And that's where our focus is. And that's, if I'm the one with it, that's where my focus is too, right? Because I'm having this terrible experience. But then again, then there's also a need for empathy to be expressed on the other side, because what if I'm a spouse, sibling, loved one, roommate, best friend, whatever I am, someone who has someone in my life with misophonia, and I can't chew in front of them. Well, how does that impact if we're in a relationship? We don't eat together, or do we eat together, but you are going to wear earplugs? Or, I don't mean to sound silly about it, but it's like you got to come up with solutions, right?
Right.
And how do people do that? And one of the most important parts is for each other to express how they feel, and also to express how they feel like the other person is impacted by being in the situation that they are in, if that makes sense. To be like, oh, if I lived with someone who was this triggered by chewing, that would be hard for me, I think. Oh, well, if I was triggered by your chewing, that would be hard for me, I think. And just kind of trying to start that's a very powerful place to start, because usually we jump right to our own suffering. Oh my gosh, I can't believe my partner has this sensitivity to pen clicking, and I can't stop myself from pen clicking. No one can. That's a problem, maybe, and a different problem. I'm not sure. Compulsive pen clicking.
Pen click.
That might be a compatibility issue if you're dating someone who's an obsessive pen clicker. But or maybe in the pen clicking championship. I don't know what people do. I don't want to shame anyone.
Professional pen clickers.
You're in a pen
You don't want to hobby shame.
Yeah.
That's a rom-com waiting to be made. Someone with misophonia and someone who's a pen clicker by trade.
Professional. Professional. Oh, wow.
Will you give up the game for your love? That's
the tagline. It writes itself.
I gotta edit that part out so we can write the script later. But before someone takes it, it's a Netflix series. But
it sounds like a Hulu one.
Right.
Hulu puts so much art into it too. So I don't know.
Much. Yeah.
But you can see that, where, and I don't have anyone in my life who has a direct misophonia, like in my personal life. I have worked with clients who have different levels of triggering and sensitivities with those types of things. And seeing how that affects someone's life. I remember of a case years ago that I was aware of where there was a kid who didn't like to go to birthday parties, and it took a while to figure out the reason why. It didn't have anything to do with what everyone was focused on. It wasn't because the kid wasn't social. It wasn't because they didn't like people. It wasn't because they didn't have self-confidence. It was because they had a huge trigger and sensitivity issue with the sound of balloons popping. And if you're a kid and you go to a party, someone's going to pop a balloon.
Yes.
And the way that I heard this, it was like an occupational therapist who was talking about input and sounds and things. And they said, for most of us, we jump if we hear a balloon pop. But he said, now compare that to if you went out to maybe a gun range and they didn't have hearing protection on and someone just fired a gun in the air. You would go, it would be more than just a jump, right? There's a visceral, oh my, kind of reaction. That's how I sound at a gun range.
That's exactly what I thought you'd sounded like. But there's also that physical pain.
Yes.
That I'm sure
exactly.
they feel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so that makes a huge difference to say, well, that's a big chunk of childhood that's different now because of this potentially, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different things people can work on with sensitivity issues. It's a little different than misophonia, but anyway, it's a very interesting thing to see. So one of the tips that they had was interesting. They said empathy, communication, and those are things you wouldn't associate with the problem directly, right? Which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It is also, they say part of empathy is remembering that misophonia is neurologically based. It's just a part of how the brain is processing information. You can't just say it's obnoxious and dismiss the person. That's not helpful, obviously. That's not helpful with a lot of things. I don't know if you I've never had anyone say, I've never had anyone just think I was obnoxious and discount me and had it be helpful about anything. But yet you do with certain, and I'll admit there are certain symptoms, and I have people in my life who have high anxiety symptoms. I have anxiety symptoms, and I know that I elicit a response, but I also know I've had a response where I'm like, I know this is a mental health issue, but I'm really frustrated with my fill in the blank, family member, whatever. And I have to remind myself that too, and say, they're not choosing to be compulsive about this. They just are, know, and I have to have that empathy where it's like, it's probably a little harder on them than it is on me.
But also me, it's affecting me.
Yes.
I think we all have to, because I also have to actively sometimes be more empathetic, especially when it comes to situations like that, where someone's anxiety or someone, is triggered by something, and you just don't want to deal with it at the moment or whatever. And I have to actively, before I have any kind of response, like outward response, I have to, they can't help it. This is not something, that's just an annoyance. It is something, that's a medical condition or, an actual issue.
And often, and I'll say, especially as parents, I think we sometimes struggle with this, where it's like, we might see something that we think is annoying or frustrating, and it's like, why don't you just stop it?
Right.
And actually, it's a flare-up of maybe a mental health condition that we're aware of because we took them to the doctor in the first place.
Right.
And to actually look at that sometimes and say, if someone does a thing that I don't really care for, do I look at it and say, oh man, or do I look at it and be more permissive and say, well, it's their, symptoms? Or do I look at it and say, I wonder where they're having a flare up. Mm-hmm. You doing okay? Can I help? You're all right? I noticed that when you're stressed, this happens more, and it's happening. I want to be here for you. Wouldn't that be weird and crazy and radical of us to do?
It's funny because
not what we think of it the first time sometimes.
No, but I just 2 days ago did that same exact thing to a friend or with a friend. She was being kind of crabby, and I was like, hey, usually when you are like this, my instinct is to run the other way, give you some space, but I feel like maybe that's not helpful. And I just would like to know, how can I help? If I can help, is that helpful for you, for me to leave you alone for however long you need? Or would you like me to be here? And she actually opened up and she was like, you know what? I am grumpy and I am a little upset, but I don't want to be left alone. And I kind of just want to be in that grumpy kind of upset space, but I also kind of want that love and support and security. So if you can do that, that would be great. And I was like, done. And my reaction to her saying that to me, just saying like, that's totally fine. I can absolutely do that for you. Do you want to cuddle? I can go over to your house and move your husband out of the way and just cuddle you for a little bit. And she was like, that would be great. We didn't end up doing it. But she then told me, she was like, you just giving me the space to not only say that and tell you what I need, but also being okay with what I was telling you helped more than if you would have came over and cuddled or whatever, And that was kind of like, that was like a new step in our relationship, but also it opened it up, where it opened our relationship up to being like, we could just be honest about how we're feeling, and we don't have to hide. It doesn't always have to be, the like, we're partying together and we're laughing and joking and, smoking a joint or whatever together. It can also be the ugly, I don't feel well, I'm being nasty, all that. We can have that together, and that can be part of our friendship. Mm-hmm. We're not going anywhere. And it was actually quite a revelation to the both of us.
That's really cool. I especially like that you suggested, because to me, that's an improvement upon when people are like, well, I'm here for you, vaguely. Mm-hmm. Or when they say, what can I do? And you're like, I don't know. And they're like, well, I'm out then. Thanks for nothing, for not telling me what to do, jerk. Or something, or not really, but, sometimes there's that feeling of pressure when someone wants to help. And you actually were like, hey, could I help with this? Would this help? Let me think about it. Let's talk about what would help, which is really cool because you're really engaging. And then it turns out actually communicating with empathy is what helped too. Which is really cool.
It really was.
Yeah.
It was. And I think it just, again, this is my best friend. We've known each other for a couple of years and we've gotten really close, but I think it works across the board with any relationship, obviously, in an appropriate way, but I think it does. And I think it helps to not take our own feelings out of the way, but not do that. What I mean is kind of open ourselves up to being like, okay, I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling about how I'm kind of perceiving your attitude, but I want to work on this together. That's kind of my approach to it, where I was just kind of like, usually my response is to run away, but I don't feel like that's what I want to do because maybe that's not what you need. I'm not sure, so I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
And I think just going that kind of extra mile of just asking, not only like, hey, what do you need? But like, this is what I'm thinking it is. Is it that? Went so far. We actually talked about it last night too, where she was like, oh my God, thank you so much for just even asking, just
cool.
putting it across that way. So
I like that a lot. That's really
I
cool.
like that. That builds up to this whole study that I've been understanding, but it's like that whole, like, I see you, I accept you, like I want to be there for you. That like, these are things that like, I didn't know how, like what my therapist meant when they were saying, just be accepting of when you're having a bad day. I'm like, how? That means I'm enabling it. And it's not, it's just saying, yeah, actually I am having a bad day. And what do I want? Because we don't have like, she might have not had that space to say that because her thoughts are all scattered because she is in a mood that she'd rather not be in too. So it's like just being there and saying, hey, let's stop. Like, do you need me to be here? Do you want space? Like, that's so important. And, you're still asking for her to be in control of her situation by giving her the choice. And she doesn't feel micromanaged or talked down to. That definitely is something that is super, super lacking in our culture, but it's still so helpful because that's the way that like we've gone to couples therapy, just me and my boyfriend as well. And so I'm the one that has all these things where it's like, no, but I'm having a bad day, so you should have a good day.
Right.
And so he'll come back and he'll say, I think you're having a bad day, but I don't want it to impact my day, but I'm still here for you if you want to hang out, if you want to do stuff. And I'm like, no. Right. Dang it, I'm having a headache or, I'm super overwhelmed or whatever. And then I'll realize and I'm like, yeah, fine, I was wrong. Thank you for helping me.
Right. I think, and I think for my best friend, I think where we were coming from is our past experiences where, like I said, I usually if someone's in a bad mood, I let them be and they can just get over it. And when they feel better, they come back. And for her, she doesn't necessarily disclose things because she's like, usually if I do, people have a reaction. And then it makes me feel like I'm wrong to feel the way I do. So I keep it to myself. And I think that was part of like the revelation that we both kind of had about ourselves and each other in our relationship,
Cool.
Yeah, without having to enable that like negativity, you could always still be there. Yeah. Like I said, it's super easy to relate on the negativities. You don't want them to also kind of go into that dark hole because it'll make probably their depression or anxiety a little bit worse. But it is nice to just be like, oh, I tried that in an argument one time and it didn't come off well. They were like, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a bad time. I'm done asking your questions.
Well,
trial and error.
Thank you guys. This has been really great. And hopefully, like I said, it's a recurring segment. So who knows who's coming back next time to review future episodes of the Psychology Today magazine. We'll wait. Well, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure they're listening and we'll all be getting a call from them soon. And I think we should, I think what we've shown more than anything is that all of us should be writing for it. Come on. At least you guys have the insights.
Well, Abby definitely.
Why don't Each of you guys, tell everybody where they find you out in the world. Maybe not physical location, but whatever's I meant more internet, stuff. But for your shows and your Twitters and your Instagrams, but your address is fine too. Whatever you want to share.
Do you want to go, Karen?
Sure. You can find everything I do on coretemparts.com, or if you're on Instagram, my two shows are That Pop This Life and Talking Shondaland. We're on Instagram as that. And for me, I'm Instagram, Twitter, everywhere, Carly Vision.
Carly Vision. Sorry, I said Carly, and I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
But so that's good that we even fixed that. Got it clear out. So.
Thank you.
But I'm just on Instagram, and mine is Arte de Abi. So it's just art in Spanish, de Abi. And that's where I will market my podcasts, which is on anchor.com/friends of friends. And again, it's just all on my Instagram. So that's better let everybody go there. Because not only do I have a bunch of resources on my Instagram that are visual, I also will put a bunch of links and just funny stuff to help people through their day as well. So Arte de Abi is my Instagram, and that's it.
Awesome.
Just found it and followed you.
Yeah,
Nice. Everybody out there who's hearing this should do the same. Find Carly and Abby out there and follow them. Say that sounded creepy again. I mean, find their Instagram and their podcast and follow those. That's what I meant.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Temp Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Temp Arts shows, visit coretemparts.com.